The first presidential debate of 2024 is next week. President Biden won a coin flip and got to choose whether he wanted to pick his podium position or the order of closing statements. He picked the right side of the stage, so Donald Trump picked having the last word. Let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba. And here in the studio, NBC's Vaughn Hilliard, who has been following the Trump campaign, and Elise Jordan, a former aide in the George W. Bush White House and an MSNBC political analyst. You know her well. All right, Monica, how is President Biden preparing for this round of debates? It's not his first against Donald Trump, but it will be his first of the 2024 cycle.
Exactly, Katie, and his first as the current president of the United States. So the incumbency comes with some perks, like being able to go to Camp David tonight for a series of days and intensive sessions with close advisors. That's where he will be huddling with many familiar names, people who helped him back in 2020, and those who really have known him best for years as he tries to prepare for this matchup. And he's going to be there and focusing kind of topic by topic at first, at things that they expect will come up, and then they'll gear up as they get closer to June 27th to doing full-on mock debates. And we don't know yet who is playing Donald Trump for President Biden's sessions. We know 4 years ago that fell to Bob Bauer, who is the president's personal attorney. So we're not sure if he's reprising his role or somebody else will be. But the president and his campaign and the advisors are really pointing this out daily, has a day job. So he's going to be juggling other commitments and things he needs to be doing while being at this mountainside retreat to prepare for that debate. And we expect that he will be there and will really be in these intensive sessions because he takes it very seriously. And sometimes incumbents in these settings, like former President Obama, struggle a little bit because they haven't been in something like this for some time, or they've been around advisors who are very deferential, and he may not be used to what it would be like to be out with these personal attacks from former President Donald Trump. So they're preparing for all of that, and they're trying to take all of that into account. And I'm told by somebody close to the process that essentially this is like cramming for a final. There's so much that the president wants to talk about with his term so far. There's so much he wants to lay out for what he views as a positive vision for what he could do with another 4 years in office. But there's also the matter of trying to highlight what a Donald Trump second term would look like and trying to fit that all into these very short answers. And that's kind of the challenge of this next week or so as they prepare it, Katie.
Okay, so you hear him cramming, as Monica Alba puts it, and working to try to put everything that President Biden wants to message to the American public into the debate next week. What do we know about Trump's prep?
It's a little bit different than what Monica just outlined. Donald Trump and his campaign team have suggested that he's not doing formal debate prep sessions like he even did in 2020 when he was debating Chris Christie, who was the stand-in for Joe Biden at the time, back when Christie and Trump were still allies. Instead, they are not planning to go through any mock sessions, the campaign is suggesting. And instead, they say that Donald Trump is doing exactly what Donald Trump does normally. Tonight, he's got a fundraiser with J.D. Vance in Cleveland. And so that's sort of how he's going about this year. I think that Donald Trump has also at the same time gone back to the same track on the album and that he played after the State of the Union address, as well as after the first 2020 debate. And that is the suggestion that Joe Biden is going to be high on drugs. He said this after the State of the Union address this year. He said that Joe Biden was as high as a kite. He said it after the first presidential debate back in 2020 that he got and suggested that he had an injection of some type. Of course, Donald Trump and these claims, they are baseless. There is no suggestion that the current president did anything like that. And yet we have already heard from Donald Trump suggesting there should be a drug test and essentially preempting everybody's expectations before next week's debate that Joe Biden that you see on stage is not the Joe Biden.
Let's play the sound.
He's going to be so pumped up. He's going to be pumped up. You know, all that stuff that was missing about a month ago from the White House? Somebody didn't pick up hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of cocaine. I wonder who that could have been. I don't know. Actually, I think it was Joe.
And I'll just say, Katie, folks repeat that.
Yeah, they do.
His supporters repeat that, and that gets out into communities around the country.
We're not playing it. There's always a debate about whether we should play the completely absurd things that he says, the unfounded allegations. And the old rules would dictate, no, we don't play that because don't give it oxygen. But it's not just MSNBC and CNN or ABC, CBS and NBC that are out there now. It's everybody can go to social media and they can see things played over and over again. So it is already there. And the effort is then to, okay, well, here's what he said, and then to give context and to fact check it. But again, it can be a fool's errand when people go wherever they want to go to get the information they want to hear.
Well, no, it's so important, though, to hear what his argument is and what he's going to be putting out there and how that's then percolating within right-wing media and within the Republican electorate. It's important to know what those arguments are if you're going to look at this election and have any sense of what the battle is really going to be about. And I do think that Donald Trump is probably in better technical fighting shape going into this debate, just because he's willing to sit down for 2-hour-long rambling interviews. And he obviously isn't constrained the way Joe Biden is by truth and by facts.
I mean, he has made very little sense since he started running for office. I mean, if you would just write down verbatim the things that he would say at a campaign, and we would do this, and try to read them out loud, they didn't make any sense. So when Donald Trump has a rambling interview, it doesn't sound different. It sounds like he's always sounded.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it will matter for Joe Biden because he is operating from a more traditional, higher standard by presidential norms, so to speak. And I do think it has been to Biden's detriment that he hasn't done a lot of tough interviews over, since the start of his presidency, really in press conferences also, because that's important to keep a president.
What is the bar for the debate for President Biden?
I think Joe Biden has to seem alert, on top of it, and completely sharp. And if there is any misstep, it could completely torpedo his campaign, because that's what voters are really looking for right now.